Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 16 of Naruto, the ultimate deterrent weapon. If you guys enjoy this what if, and want to see part 17 of it, comment down below and let me know. The like goal for this video is 100 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. And go ahead, and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. The hell? So the doctor is afraid of blood. Naruto rose an eyebrow, not fully believing Shizune. The young woman had come to him, and Jiraiya on her own, to apologize for Tsunade's actions, and tell him a few things. Shizune's eyes kept moving up and down as Naruto kept periodically hopping. Jiraiya sat cross-legged on a nearby stone, silent. Tsunade was surprisingly light on his feet, as his steps seemed to use hardly any energy from the rest of his body, releasing it in short bursts, so he only made contact for a fraction of a second with the ground. I told you, losing loved ones is part of the profession of a shinobi, and should be expected when you have family members who are also shinobi. I'm not gonna be a dick and say she needs to suck it up, but damn it, she's had what? Decades to grieve. She needs to suck it up. Jiraiya's sweat dropped at that. Well, things can have a lasting psychological impact when you consistently believe in the positive, only for the absolute worst to repeatedly happen. All of her loved ones who wanted to be Hokage died bad deaths. My uncle Dan, her brother Nuwaki, the late 4th Hokage, Uzumaki Kushina. She got a little heated, as while she understood Naruto's responses, she was going to defend her teacher from disrespect. Naruto stopped hopping at the last name, and Jiraiya looked away inside. Naruto gave a soft smile, and put his hands on his hips as he looked down. So my mother wanted to be Kage too, huh? Shizune gasped as she remembered his clan name. It was insensitive of me to mention them. I'm not gonna make that big of a deal about it. I could have been nicer too. I'd like to hear some more about my mother sometime though, if you remember anything. I know you're not a lot older than me, so it's probably reaching. She nodded and eased up, smiling. Sorry, I was young, so I only met her a few times and don't have very many memories of her. I can tell you though that she was a very beautiful woman, and would have made an amazing mother. A gathering of robed figures appeared in a holographic display. One that seemed to be the leader of them stood forth. Report. Itachi and Kasame looked unperturbed as they told him what happened. That Gaki is pretty impressive for his age. His body is pretty tough, and he seems to have some potentially impressive jutsu. The little shit took a bite out of some Hada too, of all things. Kasame grinned. He was also interested in the boy simply for the fact that his teeth resembled his own. Also, he seemed to say that only one person was important to him, and that they were female. He said this person was the one we were trying to take away from him. Several of the other cloaked beings stumbled as they quickly figured out what that meant. The man Itachi was speaking to had his ringed eyes whitened slightly. So, the Biju, or at least the 9th one, have genders, and its host is possibly quite close to it. Hey, this may be a coincidence, but we found something interesting. A plant-like person with 2 different colored halves rose out of the ground. Their name was Zetsu. We have recently learned some things. Apparently the Leaf Village's new Kage is a woman, and she's openly known as the Kyuubi. Kasame had a look on his face that was obvious to read. WTF. The ring-eyed leader looked over at the plant person with a look of disbelief. How do we know that this woman is truly that beast? While a lot of the village treats her with contempt, we were able to spy her a couple times with added appendages that look like fox ears and tails, and the energy she gives off is too strong for her to suddenly come out of nowhere. Did you attempt to capture her? Not even close. Before we could even try her, it's like that demon could detect us instantly within a certain range of her. She didn't know we were there exactly, but she suddenly went on guard, and started giving off a presence of death. We would not have been able to capture her quietly. If anything, she would have killed us. Pain looked unconcerned as a masked man off to the side narrowed his eyes at this news. No matter. If she, as unbelievable as it sounds, has become the Hokage of her village, then it's likely she won't be moving around for some time. We can more easily target her when the time is right, as long as she stays put. If the situation calls for it, capturing her former hosts may prove to be an excellent bargaining chip. If there is nothing else you have to report to me, we will conclude this meeting. The man vanished along with everyone else. Itachi, Kasame, and Zetsu, however, all kept what they wanted to say to themselves. I am interested in seeing how you grow, Naruto-kun. I can tell the future will be resting with you. That Gaki was definitely different. He ate my sword, and has the same bite. If things were different, I wouldn't mind mentoring him in the way of the sword. That child. He gives off a similar feel to mother. This is worth looking into. Maybe the plan can go off sooner than projected. Years it had been. She bit her thumb as she felt nostalgic. Several days had passed since that little bout with that brat, and she couldn't stop reflecting on it. He really did mind her of Kushina with that brute brashness. Yet at the same time, he was a lot smoother with his words, like Minato was. If Kushina had the balls, then Minato had the grace. Her mouth twitched in amusement at the odd thought. Together they made an odd combination that was Naruto. Someone who had the balls to say whatever he wanted and the brains to understand exactly what he was doing. In her mind that was both a good and bad thing, as she knew firsthand that he could be incredibly annoying, but she supposed, if she were in his shoes, it could be strategic to have that kind of disposition, where you can easily bait your opponents. The fact that the boy was very strong on his own probably took a lot of the stress out of the situation. He definitely would have lost to her in an all-out fight, minus the blood issue she had. But he didn't falter at all, and he had a respect for that despite things. She wasn't completely sure what his psychological state was, but strength-wise he had the potential to be a powerful Kage. A Kage. It's what Dan and Iwaki had wished to become. It was their dream. She may be a little spiteful with her words, but she didn't hate the idea of someone being a Hokage. She more along the lines hated the pain that came with being a shinobi. But then who actually enjoyed that? You seem to have a lot on your mind. A voice playfully hissed at her as she was snapped out of her musing. Yamato looked amused as she was in Tsunade's face, who was so clearly out of it. Yamato leaned back and snickered. Meanwhile, Tsunade beat herself up mentally as she knew that being so unaware could get her killed quickly, especially with being around her estranged teammate. Well, you are here at the scheduled time. Am I correct to assume that you agree to my terms? Yamato had a fever, a light one at best. Clearly a side effect of surviving a Reaper death seal with only minor damage. That minor damage being the loss of her right arm, shown by the darkened skin that was currently wrapped in bandages. It was her dominant arm, so it was a setback in a number of ways, but it wouldn't be for long. Besides, she also had Kabuto with her for whatever aid she needed. I'll do it, just make sure you bring them back. Yamato smirked and held out her hand as Tsunade walked forward. Just as they were inches apart, a kunai came whistling through the air right at Tsunade's head. Another one came even faster from above her, hitting it, causing it to be deflected at Yamato as they jumped apart, causing it to miss her just barely. Kabuto made himself known behind Yamato as Naruto appeared on top of a fence near Tsunade with his hands in his pockets. Yamato looked at Kabuto for a moment, already figuring out what was going on. So, you plan to trick me, Tsune-chan? Don't you want your dear lover and brother back? She growled as she steeled her nerve. They wouldn't want to be brought back through such means. It would be a desecration to their graves. Well, that's a shame. Looks like we are enemies again. It's nice to see you again, Naruto-kun. She gave a smile to Naruto, who just looked at her blankly and shrugged before turning to Tsunade, ignoring her. So, are you going to tell me what part of your weathered mind thought it was a good idea to try to take on Yamato along with her assistant? You're out of practice, she isn't. Yet you drugged all three of us last night. Jiraiya and Tsunade felt like connecting for a bit over old times, and were drinking along with Tsunade. Only reason why Naruto drunk was to not be treated like a kid. Tsunade's eyebrow twitched at this brat's mouth. How are you even moving about already? Well, I have to hand it to you, that little drug you made I didn't notice until it was already inside of me. You really are a medical genius. And it lasts all of 10 minutes. He may have sounded like he was mocking her, but he wasn't. That drug was supposed to last 10 hours. Well, I guess my body has a metabolism that's 60 times faster than your standard ninja. I also burned it out 10 minutes before I went to sleep, so I don't even have a hangover. Jiraiya was already stirring though, but very drunk when I got up. I'm guessing he'll be here soon. He spoke like he wasn't really that concerned or worried with the matter. She had no idea why, but then she noticed his appearance. He still had on his dark high-collar short-sleeved hoodie with orange trim and gray pants. His sandals were black, but tied around his calves and forearms, leaving the ends of his fingers exposed were bandages. You know, Naruto-kun, I should thank you for your help. If it weren't for you interrupting my old sensei, he may have succeeded in sealing more than just my arm. Things could have been much worse off for me. She chuckled before a shiver came over her. Naruto directed his gaze at her, and his eyes flashed a different color. In that split second she thought she saw someone with white hair and the purple mask of the Shinigami hanging on the side of her face, draping herself over his shoulders and leaning on his back, grinning at her. Oh, so this is kind of my fault. You know I could get you your arm back. They looked at him surprised as Naruto held his hand out. You brat, what are you doing? Jiraiya showed up, landing on the fence with Shizune behind them, all only for him to lose his balance and fall off it, landing on his face, the drug still affecting him. Naruto ignored him as he kept his position up with his hand out to Yamato. You can do that. He nodded his head. What is it you want then? I never said I would do it. He dropped his hand and his mouth twitched as Yamato looked annoyed. The kami snickered in his head at the snake woman's expression. There are many things I can do. Doesn't mean I do them. Hell, I could do you. Yamato expected him to say more on that as they all looked at him expectantly, only for him to just look at her blankly, clearly having no intention of saying anything else. Yamato sighed, getting annoyed. I suppose it's just one of those days. She shook her head a little as she felt a faint buzzing in her ears, as did everyone else. Kabuto, please take care of our fox boy. I'll deal with my old teammates. Boom. The ground where Naruto just was exploded as he went through the air fast, about to stomp on Yamato. Kabuto moved in front to block him as Yamato jumped high. The gust of wind went out as Naruto's foot met Kabuto's forearms as he blocked. Your kick may have been without warning, and without a lot of power, but you have too much of a presence to fully surprise high-caliber shinobi. I was hoping someone would block me. His face shadowed and fangs gleamed. The ground cracked before giving away. As if Naruto had a rocket powering him, Kabuto was only able to stop Naruto's moment from the flying stomp for that single second before the force continued as Naruto transitioned into a diving kick and Kabuto was pressed with his back into the ground. As they went sliding across the ground through several walls and into a house, destroying it into rubble. The Sannin and Shizune all looked shocked as Naruto just up and checked an elite Jonin level fighter. Yamada looked like she was about to wet herself as her cheeks went rosy on her pale skin. Such a strong body. Jiraiya looked at her with a dry expression as he got up. You know, it'd be too much to ask you to just go. He really wasn't in the best shape to deal with this woman. Do I get the boy if I leave? Tsunade didn't know how to feel, realizing she had already been forgotten. That's not my decision to make. Oh, so if I can get Naruto-kun to come with me, it's okay. I didn't say. Naruto-kun. She shouted at Direct House. No? Ah. She dropped her hand a bit crestfallen, causing the other two Sannin to actually look a bit amused. Naruto did have high sensory skills related to sound, so it was likely he could understand what they were saying perfectly without him being there, if he was only that far away. No matter, I can be very convincing. Though it would be easier if I had both hands to convince him with. Suna-chan, if you would be a dear. Tsunade didn't move, just glared at her. Yamada sighed and grabbed her lame arm. She lifted its hand up to her mouth and bit it hard enough to draw blood. She held the hand and Tsunade froze up as her pupils constricted, and she quivered, getting Shizune's attention. Alright, Tsunade's been defeated, your next Jiraiya. Jiraiya's sweat dropped at how callously she dealt with Tsunade taking advantage of her weakness. Though he figured by the nature of what they were, blood was going to show up in the fight eventually. No, Jiraiya, go away. His sweat drop grew. She may be the strongest of the Sannin, but fighting them would still take a while. Naruto balanced on one foot inside Direct House. Kabuto picked himself up, smirking as he spit out some blood. That kick broke several of his ribs, but his body healed fast. You cut the tendons in my heel at that short moment my attack landed. You're good, Naruto, but don't think you'll have an easy time. We'll see about that. He did a sensory scan of his body and felt his injury healing, but slower than usual. Must be from the very precise application of chakra. You want me to fix that? He heard Akami's voice in his head, her voice soaked with a half-hearted sense of disinterest. What would you get out of that? She wasn't exactly as openly accommodating as Kuromi had become. He also hadn't reacted with her long enough to not be at least a little suspicious of her. What? I'm not allowed to do things simply to relieve some boredom. Hey, I just wanted an answer. Your reasons, I don't actually care that much. I'm not one to jump to using Kuromi so easily, the same would apply to you. He continued to balance on one foot and shifted his side to Kabuto and held his arms up in his stance, palms facing his person. His fighting style was flexible and his body was adaptive, so being down a leg wasn't going to stop him by a lot. Kabuto rose an eyebrow as he looked at Naruto, intrigued at the sight of a genin, calmly adjusting his posture while taking a debilitating energy. Kabuto took on the offensive. If he dealt with Naruto quickly, he could capture him and take him to his Yamada. Maybe she would also let him run some test on the weird boy. Naruto leaned back as the wind went by him, barely avoiding Kabuto's knife hand from his face. He slid back on one foot and rolled his tongue around in his mouth. There was an audible crunch and pop in his mouth as his eyes fluttered a second before he spit out to the side some blood and a couple molars. The chakra scalpel left no mark on his face, but it had cut some of the inner lining of his cheek and severed a good bit of the gums in the teeth he just spit out. It's hard to calculate the range to dodge. The use of chakra is light enough to be hardly noticeable by my sense, yet is precise enough to be deadly. Good Kami, this guy didn't study Tsunade's super strength. Kabuto was also too fast. Being in close quarters with the snake-style medic was not going to help him. His eyes shone brightly the blues like a bright day before they shifted to its brilliant sunset gradient. He started feeling everything around him in finer detail, as nature also felt him better. I'm not going to make this easy for you, glasses. The boy was emanating an odd power now as Kabuto went wary. He was surging energy. Naruto filled his lungs quickly, causing Kabuto to rush him, intent to stop him from doing whatever he was trying to do. Naruto felt him thaw and quickly snapped back, flexing his whole body. The shell of chakra pulsed out from his body, blowing Kabuto back a little, giving Naruto the time he needed to act on the man's short stagger time. Naruto dropped down to one hand and spun his uninjured leg out, kicking Kabuto back into the wall of the house and through it. Naruto jumped up through the collapsing wood roof, shooting clean through the air. As he was airborne, he got a clean look at Yamada, fending off both Sannin, who frankly couldn't do much to her. Tsunade herself wasn't really putting up a fight at all. It was Jiraiya who was picking up the slack. He sent a pulse of chakra from his body opposite of them, and he aimed at them. Jiraiya paused mid-jutsu as Yamada looked towards the small noise. Naruto let out more pulses to keep his speed up, making up for his disabled leg, as he hopped across the ground towards Tsunade, her attention catatonic from the blood on her. Naruto got an evil grin as he was feeling a sense of payback. He held his hand back, and it started to blur as it vibrated intensely. Wake up. Naruto touched down and at the same time, brought the full weight of his hand across Tsunade's face. Her head reeled as the others looked shocked. A ripple of wind went out, and Naruto was impressed Tsunade stayed standing as she leaned to the side. Buzzing went through her ears before her eyes refocused, and she righted herself again. The blood wasn't bothering her that much now. What did you do, he? She held her cheek in pain as her eyes teared up. Damn, it stung. Are you paying attention now, or do I need to slap your ass next? Naruto had the audacity to say that without a completely unperturbed or hinting expression at the lewd implications. She glared at Naruto still cradling her cheek. He boredly raised his hand up, and she flinched at the motion. That's what I thought. Naruto went alert again as Kabuto was behind him with a scalpel to his spine. Naruto flipped this time, completely avoiding it. He went on both his hands and swung his legs at Kabuto like maces. The man was able to smoothly deflect each one before the force of it sent him sliding back a bit. Are you having a hard time, Kabuto-kun? Yamada's voice hissed with amusement as Kabuto looked a bit apologetic. Sorry, but his reaction speed is insane. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet? Naruto finally gained an excited look on his face. Oh, please show me more. Yamada licked her lips, her long tongue making Naruto lapse a bit as he shivered. She bit her hand again and formed signs before running the blood along the seals on her other arm. Their eyes widened as they knew what was happening, Kabuto jumping towards her. Tsunade quickly grabbed Shizune and jumped away. Jiraiya did the same while Naruto backstepped. Boom. There was a huge explosion of smoke as a massive snake made itself known. Yamada. What is it now? Nanda's voice boomed out, annoyed. He had been in a bad mood ever since he found out she chose not to summon him to attack a village. Though considering what happened to the snake, it may have been better for him not to show up. Well, you see, Manda, look at that boy down there. The boy whose hair looks like it had been kissed by the sun goddess herself. Kabuto and Manda actually sweat dropped at the description, but he looked down. Naruto looked up at the snake curiously. Manda was impressed such a hatchling could stare up at him so calmly. He'd make a great summoner for them. He's the container of the Kyuubi, and as of late my new person of interest. I see. He knew what she wanted now. He wouldn't complain this time. The boy seemed interesting enough to be worth the trip. They were stopped from their conversation as two more explosions of smoke occurred as a giant slug and toad also appeared. Naruto looked up blankly at all them. You know, I feel so out of place right now. He placed his foot down finally, it having healed enough for him to walk again. You could always release me, you know. I'd help. That might be too excessive, and I can't tell if releasing you so soon at that level would kill me or not. Surprised her that instead of outright refusing her, Naruto seemed to have actually considered his options. Besides, I still want to have some fun. He jumped up the toad, quickly scaling the massive thing in seconds. Jiraiya, who was ready to ignite some toad oil, blinked at the boy who now soared up over him. His orange eyes started leaving a glowing haze behind as he charged his chakra with nature chakra as well, causing the three boss summons to recoil. What kind of senjutsu is this? It definitely wasn't pure, but it wasn't far off either. Naruto touched down on Gamabunta's head. Work this time. He squatted down and angled towards Manda's head. Calculate trajectory. Speed can be ignored once it passes the specific threshold of this distance. All other estimates should be unnecessary. Braking will be via impact. Shunshin added to my chakra and techniques. Shooting star. A shockwave went out as Naruto blurred forward with his pulse-based Shunshin. A split second later he crashed into Manda's nose. The snake winced a little as it stung, tilting him back slightly. Naruto righted himself to jump off the nose and land on top of it as he let out a breath. Well, it worked that time. He was stopped as Yamada closed on him and grabbed him around the neck as they both fell down the snake. You continue to amaze me, Naruto-kun, but it looks like you couldn't avoid me this time. He was about to retaliate when Yamada was forced to let go. Drop him. Tsunade sailed right between them with her heel hitting the snake hard, causing Manda to curse. She turned around and quickly grabbed Naruto like luggage and ran up the snake. Yamada had a dark look on her face at her former teammates stealing Naruto from her. She gagged out as her kusanagi emerged from her throat, and she grabbed it, giving it a few test swings, before dashing at Tsunade full force faster than Tsunade herself could move. Yamada had always been the fastest. Tsunade gasped out in pain as she was impaled from the back through her lower abdomen, causing her to drop Naruto. Yamada was about to move from Tsunade to grab him, but Tsunade recovered from the pain fast enough to rip her sword out of her, and grab Yamada's leg. She then roared and threw Yamada all the way up to crash under Manda's snout. All that hit was some mud as it was shown to be a clone. Tsunade was then struck across her face as Yamada punched her. Naruto, as he kept falling, was then caught by Jiraiya. Well, you got you, kid. That rescue was short-lived as Tsunade's body crashed down into Jiraiya's back, causing Naruto to go flying up again. Kabuto, Shizune, and the three boss summons all exchanged looks at each other, not sure what to do as the Sannin basically played keep away with Naruto's body, which was something he didn't like at all. The tick mark grew large on his head as Yamada came for him now to grab him. The expression on her face was that of arousal, and in this kind of situation that wasn't something he wanted to see right now. Enough. The black chakra chain erupted from his lower spine like a tail which wrapped around her legs. He held his hands up in a hammer fist, and the bandages on his forearms burst off as black erupted up them, and a giant executioner blade formed in his hands. He swung it straight down at Yamada intending to bisect her, but she blocked him with one arm with her kusanagi. Her blade actually started cutting into his own however, while the Sannin was indeed physically strong, one arm was no longer enough to hold back Naruto's strength. She wasn't sure if two would have even been enough anymore as she was smacked back into Manda's body. She glared at Naruto and shouted, "Manda." He blinked as he had forgotten about the snake's purpose there. A half a second was all it took for Manda to focus on him and lunged down, snapping Naruto in his jaws whole. The others paled as Yamada succeeded in at least one of her objectives. But now take him back to the summoning. There was a roar from inside Manda's mouth before a booming noise went out, and Manda's mouth shot open as an extremely powerful blow hit the roof of his mouth, causing some blood to flow. Naruto had a shit-eating grin on his face as he went into the air having punched out of a giant serpent. Tsunade's eyes widened as she saw a younger version of herself, Minato, Kushina, and her grandfather all overlap Naruto for a second. She looked at his arm and saw it bleeding in places but still mostly workable. She didn't know how he did it, but Naruto had actually been able to recreate her super strength to some extent unknown. Manda, who had already started the recall to his realm, had been too startled to stop it as 2 seconds later he disappeared in smoke. Naruto landed on his feet as his sword fell from the sky stabbing right next to him, and put his hands in his pockets grinning as the upper half of his face shadowed. Yamada's lip quivered as she stopped herself from whining or whimpering. She really didn't want to leave Naruto here, especially after what she just saw, but the odds were getting bad now. She didn't get her arm healed, she didn't get Naruto, and now she was all hot and bothered. "Kabuto, we are leaving." Kabuto was instantly on her side and they shied away. Naruto stood there till he could no longer sense them and relaxed. "I've got you sent down to memory now. It will be hard for you to hide around me anymore." His arm started to spasm on its own, and he felt dizzy and very tired. Holding his head he stumbled as Tsunade was quickly on him trying to help. As the adrenaline passed he didn't remember much else that happened after that. "Say my name." The sound of whipping could be heard in the council room. Cries and curses could be heard before a lash went out again. "Say my name." "Kuromi." Another lash went out even harder this time. "Kuromi-sama." People in the council wore a rainbow of expressions. Some looked horrified, some looked amused, some feigned impassivity, some were flat out laughing, such as in Yuzukatsume. One of the civilian heads had disrespected Kuromi too much for her liking. Really, it was just them saying they hated demons and the color red. How dare they hate red? So now she was whipping the man. Wait, that's not completely accurate. She was having the man whipped by Hinata. The soft mouse girl she was to Kuromi, she kept looking back at her a little shakily in protest only for Kuromi to single her to whip the man again. The expression that made it look like Hinata was about to cry from uncertainty and embarrassment as she against her own wishes wiped the man. Well, Kuromi would be lying if she said the cute girl and the scene in general wasn't fueling her sadism. Again, my assistant. "Nu." She whipped the man again but wasn't paying attention and lashed the man's tailbone. Hinata went blue in the face from disgust as the man surprisingly now shivered in pleasure, moaning out. She looked back at her boss hoping she had the same reaction, only to pale as Kuromi seemed to rub her chin curiously. Maybe this has gone on for too long. Still, though, exploiting the masochistic side of this waste of meat could serve to further humiliate him in public. "Well, we've come this far, no point stopping now. Hina-chan, get him to say my full title." "Yes, acknowledge your Hokage." The girl comically cried as she shakily held up the whip to crack again. "I don't want to do this anymore." Right when Hinata was about to swing, Kuromi blinked as a voice made Hinata go rigid. "Kurama Kuromi, the Kyuubi no Yuko, what the hell are you doing?" Hinata, seeing Naruto drop the whip trying to look as innocent as possible, which in a sense she was. Kuromi saw Naruto standing at the door with two Sannin on the sides of him and some older girl with black hair. She didn't care, she just knew what she had to do. "Naru-kun." She tackled his chest and nuzzled him hard, causing him to stumble a little, before smiling fondly at her, and removed her Kage hat to pat her head and rub her ears, causing her to purr lightly. The civilians and elders were flabbergasted, as were some of the clan heads. The rest of the clan heads didn't know how to feel. They were only starting to come to terms with the fact their village was getting ruled by the most powerful demon. Now they see her acting like a lost puppy schoolgirl in Naruto's presence. This was too weird to make sense of. Tsunade's eyes were comically white as she kept pointing at the demoness's ears and tail, and looked at Jiraiya, who just shrugged. "I miss you to Kuromi." The killing intent in the room suddenly became visible as Naruto gulped when Kuromi grabbed him by the front of his jacket and held him up off the ground, 9 tails flowing behind her intimidatingly. You dropped the leadership role of this village on me and then ran away. You knew exactly where I went. I didn't know when you would even be back. It was only like 2 weeks. That's like a day for you. That's not the point. This job was so stressful. Do you know how hard it is to govern a village of meatbags? Naruto glanced over at the man who was still writhing in pleasure from his lashing, then at Hinata, who blushed in embarrassment and looked away. He seemed to be doing fine. Don't look at them, look at me. She could feel herself losing ground as her voice lost its edge. Gladly. She blushed a little at his random casual flirt. Don't you know that even a day without you is like an eternity for me? She looked away a little bashful. Naruto's eyes widened astronomically at that. Did she just stutter? What is this cute act? He blushed for a second before his mind kept going, and he went calm again. Wait a minute. Stuttering and cute in ways uncommon to Kuromi. What changed while I was gone? He then remembered something and glanced back at Hinata. Kuromi sweated a little seeing his line of sight. Don't look at her. So, she's your assistant. Fun. Kuromi sighed and dropped Naruto. She could only try to trick him so long, before he caught on. Still, she was more than happy that he was back. So was your mission successful? Yep. He thumbed over at the blonde woman who flinched now in the presence of a demon. I bring you Tsunade, the supposed best healer. Kuromi looked the woman up and down. She was a bit taller than the woman, so she leaned down a little as she stared closely at her face, making the woman nervous as she sniffed her. Kuromi then rubbed her chin, and held a hand under the woman's breast, causing people to gasp as Tsunade's eyes widened, feeling molested. Kuromi lifted it in her palm a little, and squeezed lightly, making Tsunade bite her lip to stifle a bit of a moan. Nice weight to these things. But you are hiding your appearance. We are going to have to fix that later. Tsunade paled, not sure what the fox meant by that and shocked that her appearance was seen through that easily. Hospital. Kuromi sat behind Naruto, hugging the back of his head to her chest as Tsunade read off a paper. For whatever reason, she requested that Naruto be at the hospital ASAP. Of course, Kuromi wasn't going to let him out of her sight so soon. So why am I here? Is my iron levels low? He joked. Yes and no. He blinked at that, not being serious. What? That black metal you have stored in your body to make that sword of yours. It's largely composed of iron. When you use it, you already have an extreme concentration of iron in your body, but it's not enough, so you end up basically starving your body of iron when you remove your sword from your body. When you reabsorb your sword, it actually takes a bit of time for your body to fully assimilate it. Now that's not that big of an issue. The issue is a dosage use very much of your own chakra, so is seen as foreign to your body, which causes negative effects on top of those. You're suffering from extreme metal poisoning. It's because of your high healing that you are even able to go most of the time without showing any symptoms. However, this will only get worse as time goes on. Damn, he really liked his cursed blood sword Thingy too. There had to be something he could do, or else he would need to get rid of it. Because some of it is also seeped into your bones, and is still being seen as foreign, there is a high chance it will stunt your growth. Well, sword, we had a good run. So, what's the solution? I'm going to need both of your help in removing the metal from your body. As of right now, that should be around 50 kilograms worth. You really shouldn't even be alive. The metal must literally be your blood, and if that's the case, it poses an even bigger problem. It's always something. He would roll with it. In the background where no one could see, Neo floated above, looking on at the scene in interest. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.